Today I'm over in Torrance, California, and this seems to be just kind of like a regular working class area that is not too far away from Redondo Beach and all the beach towns that are just extremely expensive. So hopefully we'll at least see a couple listings for sale in this neighborhood and see what more or less like the average house goes for in this area. And speaking of buying a house, this is something that I've been wanting to cover more in depth, and I'm so glad I came across this story today talking about how much money people are spending on houses as far as the percentage of their monthly income. Because conventional wisdom says that you should not spend more than 30% of your monthly gross take-home pay on your house payment. And that's with everything, guys. We're not talking about just the mortgage. We're talking about the mortgage, taxes, insurance, everything. Say your household makes $100,000 per year, then you shouldn't be spending more than $2,500 per month on your house payment, according to this conventional wisdom. But here's the thing, with the median home price at around $420,000 right now, that's not enough money to keep your house payment at the conventional wisdom numbers of 30% debt to income ratio. Right now, the average mortgage payments are hovering anywhere between $2,700 to $3,000 a month. So just to afford that average mortgage payment, your monthly income for your household would need to be well above the $100,000 per year mark to make that technically affordable. And right now, check this out. According to this report, the average home buyer is putting up 41% of their monthly income towards a house payment right now. And remember, guys, this is gross. So when you factor in that this is not your take-home pay, this is actually the gross salary, your debt to income ratio, or the percentage that people are spending on their house payment, is probably much closer to 50%, which is insane, okay? 50% of your monthly income going towards your house payment is very dangerous financially. But yet, this is what most people are doing right now. And here's the crazy thing. When you go to expensive places like San Francisco or New York City, people spend anywhere between 51 to 70% of their income on their house payment. And I don't even know how people are getting approved for this, because usually most banks and lenders will not approve anybody for more than like a 45% debt to income ratio. But it turns out, it seems like that's not the case anymore, and they seem to be pushing that boundary further and further. And in case people don't remember, during the last housing market crash, the number one thing that got us in trouble was the fact that there were so many subprime loans out there. And what a subprime loan was is when somebody that can't afford the payments gets the house, they never were going to be able to afford to pay for that house, okay? So naturally, we saw massive waves of defaults on those properties, which led to all the foreclosures that we had back in those days, which made the housing market crash, essentially. Now, even though today that situation probably is not nearly as severe as it was back then, it's starting to build up towards that. Because if the average home buyer is spending 50% of their take-home pay on a house payment right now, they probably aren't going to be able to handle too much financial turmoil in the way of unexpected expenses and all the things that I've been covering with you guys recently. You know, an air conditioner going out, that's $5,000–$6,000 right there. Oh, your homeowner's insurance just went up by $2,000 a year. There's an extra, $200 a month payment right there. Oh, your property taxes just went up. There's an extra payment. You know what I'm saying? So if you're already maxed out at 50% of your take-home pay, then those further increases are going to eat into your monthly budget even further. And this is where I think this spells disaster for a lot of people. After my video the other day, and I was talking about the guy in Florida that had his mortgage payment go up by $1,000 a month, a lot of people in the comments were surprised, saying, oh, can this actually happen if you have a fixed rate loan? Yes, absolutely it can happen. Other people were saying something like this happened to them, where now their property taxes are higher, their insurance is higher, leading to them having to pay like an extra $400 a month or so. And think about it, not everybody can absorb that extra $400 a month payment. And for the people who cannot, it might actually force them into a situation where they must sell the house because they can no longer afford to keep up with it. And that's what I think we're going to see happen over the next several years, because unless people start getting massive wage increases that basically beat out inflation and can help absorb these extra costs when it comes to owning a home, I don't think most people are going to be able to. If this recession hits and gets bad and we see unemployment starting to go up, I think you're going to see a lot of people needing to sell their homes, not wanting to, but they're going to need to. And some of the financial experts recommend that you keep all of your monthly debts, not even just your house payment, but your house payment, student loan payments, your car payments, everything at no more than 33% of your net income, not even your gross income, which I would go as far to say that today, guys, that's basically unattainable for most people. If you have a house payment or a rent payment, whatever, doesn't matter, and you have a car that you have a loan on, the chances of that falling into 33% or less of your take-home pay is practically 0%, I think. You know, most people aren't going to fall into that category, unfortunately. You know, when you factor in that people's student loan payments are going to be ramping back up in a couple of months from now, and the average payment's anywhere between $300 and $400 per month, and right now, the average car payment is $733 per month. That's over $1,000 a month right there, without even having a place to live. So I think people sticking with this type of budget right now is pretty much impossible for almost everyone.
Now here we have a listing that was basically on the market for only a week. No price cuts, anything, and it already went under contract. They were asking $1,150,000. It's a 4-bed, 2-bath house, almost 1,900 square feet. And it looks like a pretty decent house. I don't know this area at all, but the fact that it went under contract that fast must mean that this house was priced to sell, and this is pretty much what a house should cost in this neighborhood. And the property taxes here are about $3,800 per year right now for the current owner.
If you're trying to follow these figures right now, that means you would need to make roughly $150,000 per year, or about $9,600 a month after tax, in order to kind of fall into this magical sweet spot of being able to balance all these finances and still have a reasonable amount of money left over each month for other things. And I think for most people, that's impossible. And this is where I think we're going to see a lot of trouble in the future, guys. It might not be tomorrow, might not even be this year, but the moment people start losing jobs, if they lose jobs, the moment things start getting tough and the cost of living and the cost to own a home continues to go up and wages don't, that's when you're going to start seeing more people have trouble with this. And you know, some people are so tapped out right now that they're actually resorting to tapping into their 401k contributions to pay for all these extra expenses that it costs to own a house right now. Because the thing is, if you can't afford to make your payments and say you're contributing $200-300 a month to your 401k, then someone might say, well, it's easier to just stop making those contributions or lower the contributions to help with the increased costs of the home. Except you're eating into your future retirement and you're basically robbing your future self to pay for today. And don't forget, guys, the average annual cost to maintain a single family home, and that's just the regular maintenance cost, not even anything crazy happening or going wrong, is about $6,500 a year, in addition to your mortgage payments, your taxes, and your insurance.
Now here's another listing right around the corner from the other one that's been on the market for only about a week at $970,000. It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and if the other one is any indicator of how fast this one might sell, I'm guessing they might get a contract any day now. And check this out, since this owner has owned this place for so long, their current property tax bill is only $1,589 a year for a house that's worth $1 million. How is that for Proposition 13? That really saves you some money here in California if you bought a long time ago.
So, you know, it's reasons like this that I keep telling people that, you know, make sure you get your finances in order, guys. Like, the less debt you have, the better, because, you know, the less monthly expenses you have each month that you need to cover is going to be a blessing if you're going to be looking to be buying a home. Because it's a guarantee that the expenses to maintain that home and your monthly on that house will only go up over the years. It's not going to go down, okay? So the more debts you have and the more payments you have, the harder it's going to be to keep up with all that, especially if you're not getting enough of a wage increase every year to keep up with it. And this is also why it's so important to have an emergency fund ready. You know, you got to have 6 months of all of your monthly expenses in place right now in order to be able to absorb a job loss, in order to be able to absorb a potential increase in these payments. Because maybe if your monthly goes up $500 a month on your house, but you have a 6-month emergency fund, you can dip into some of that to help with the adjustment and then start replenishing it later on. I think this is a pretty dangerous situation that a lot of people are getting themselves into. I mean, I would personally never spend half of my income on a house payment. Now, when I was really broke, I used to have to spend that much, if not more, on rent, okay? But I think that's a different situation because number one, when you're renting, you're obviously, most of the time, not in as stable of a financial situation as you would be as a homeowner, okay? So when you're young, you don't make a lot of money, you still need a place to live, naturally, more of your monthly income is going to go towards your rent than you probably would like it to. But as a homeowner, it's a different story because you're stuck with that home, guys. Like if you fall behind on your rent and you can't pay your rent, there's no consequences to that besides being kicked out and eventually evicted, which you should never have happen to you because that's going to destroy your financial life. But beyond that, there's no consequences. You're not going to have a foreclosure. You're not going to lose a huge down payment that you put into the property, any of the renovation costs or maintenance costs you've put into the house over the years. You lose all that when you lose the home in foreclosure. But as a renter, the risk is much lower. So I'm not saying it's good to spend more of your monthly income when you're renting. I'm just saying that a lot of times for most folks it's probably necessary. But as a homeowner, you have a choice, right? You don't have to do it. You can choose not to, especially right now when it's pretty much cheaper to rent basically everywhere across the country versus buying by quite a bit. I think up to 20 to 30% in most cases. So, you know, you're saving a lot of money by renting these days, and it doesn't make sense to jump in, put yourself over the edge with a crazy financial situation just to say that, oh, now I'm a homeowner. Well, great. Hopefully you can keep up with the income that you're going to need to maintain that situation of being a homeowner. That's what I would be worried about. And we kind of briefly mentioned a little bit earlier that the student loan payments are going to resume in the next couple of months. And this is going to be yet another problem for people that want to buy a home that have these student loans, because when you go to get approved for one of these mortgages, one thing that the lender will look at is how much other debt obligations you have each month on top of the future mortgage payment they're going to be qualifying you for. And that ultimately determines how much money they'll allow you to spend on a property and how much your monthly payment can actually be. Now, some people who were smart during this moratorium on the student loan debt might have actually paid off the student loans or paid down their balance significantly and took advantage of the no interest period that we had for over 3 years. Or people who didn't do that, maybe they were smart enough to at least put aside the money that they would have spent on student loan payments and save the extra money for either future loan payments, or say you want to become a homeowner, now you have a down payment for a house, right? But it turns out there was a study by Zillow, and they determined that the average home buyer has delayed about $15,000 worth of student loan payments throughout this moratorium. And if they actually save that money, Zillow has figured out that in about 29 different housing markets throughout the country, that 15 grand would actually be enough to serve as a down payment to get them into a starter home. And that's with only putting a 5% down payment though, guys. We're not talking a 20% down payment. That's just 5% down. So if you live in a place like Pittsburgh or St. Louis or Memphis or even Birmingham, then you might be able to actually take that $15,000 that you saved during the moratoriums and buy a house. But here's the problem. The majority of people that had the opportunity to save this extra money most likely squandered it on vacations and going out, drinking, doing different things, and probably didn't save that extra money. So not only are they going to be hit with the repayments soon, but also they're not going to have a down payment for becoming a homeowner if you want to do that. You pretty much just set your financial self back a few years by being irresponsible and not taking advantage of this golden opportunity that people had. And maybe not everybody was irresponsible, because the fact of the matter is the cost of living and inflation has gone up significantly since the pause on student loan payments have started. And it can also be argued that people that had these student loan payments paused might have had to use the extra money to just get by and pay for life, because it's expensive now. So here's a couple of thoughts on this. Number one, I think it's 40 million Americans have some form of student loan debt that are going to have these payments restarted in a few months. The people that decide to start paying that back and decide not to take advantage of the missed payment program for another year, delay it basically as long as possible, for those people, they're going to have that extra payment that can no longer go towards owning a home. And we already see buyer demand at basically record low levels across the country. And I think this is going to make buyer demand go down even further, because so many people are not going to be able to qualify to buy a home. Okay, even if you're able to right now, you might not be able to once the student loan payments come back. This is why I keep telling people that literally the only thing that the housing market has going for it right now is its extremely low supply of inventory that's keeping things as high as it is. But demand is gone, guys. Say if we were just to double the amount of inventory we have on the market right now and demand were to stay the same like it is now, that would make home prices absolutely plummet. And now we're just removing even more people from the potential buying market who could even afford to buy, because now they're going to be saddled with these extra payments again. So on the one hand, this is good news for anybody who doesn't have a student loan payment, because probably your pool of competition is about to shrink even further as fall comes around and these payments resume. And naturally, this could help home prices go down as demand shrinks even further. And whether you take that last point as good news or bad news, here's something else that might actually help the future of the housing market. Institutional investors are starting to become net sellers in the housing market today. So what does that mean as a net seller? Well, basically it means institutional investors, these big hedge funds that buy up all these single family homes and place them for rent, they're now selling more homes than they're buying. So they're still buying homes. It's not like they have stopped buying, but the amount of selling activity that they're doing is more than the amount of buying activity. So essentially they're unloading properties from their portfolio and not buying enough new ones to replenish them. And the big one in the news with this is Invitation Homes. They're based out of Dallas, Texas. And at one point during the pandemic, during their busiest quarter, they bought almost 1,700 single family homes in just one quarter during the pandemic real estate boom that we saw. So at this moment, Invitation Homes is literally the largest owner of US single family homes, period, okay? And they sold about 378 homes in the first quarter of 2023, but they only bought 276, which makes them a net seller. So at the end of the second quarter of 2023, they owned 82,837 homes, down from 83,148. Then you have American Homes for Rent. These guys are selling a lot more than they're actually buying. Just in the first quarter of 2023, they actually sold 666 homes, but they only bought 312. So their buying activity is way down. And just to put that into perspective, guys, during the first quarter of 2022, American Homes for Rent bought 1,131 homes and only sold 171. So I want you to think about this for a minute. If these big hedge funds that are in the business of buying and selling homes and renting them out for a profit are unloading more homes than they're buying right now, what should that tell you as the average home buyer? It means that it's probably not a good time to buy, because these guys know that the party is over, okay? And they're cashing out right now for a couple of different reasons. Number one, because they can still get almost record highs for their properties, so it's a good time to cash out and make a little money on them. Sometimes they lose money on these properties actually. But the other main reason is because cap rates have now fallen to such a low rate that many of these properties that they're selling likely are no longer profitable to keep as a rental property. And that is a big problem for a company that makes all of their money off of buying real estate and renting it out. In fact, according to another study, all the institutional buyers that own over 1,000 homes bought 90% fewer homes in January and February of 2023 than they did in January and February of 2022. So these guys are completely pulling back right now on their home buying activity, and they're looking to unload these homes to a sucker like you that's willing to pay full market value at today's prices and rates, and you'll be the one holding the bag when everything falls apart. So I just want people to look at all the warning signs that are out there right now. You know, if institutional investors are selling off their portfolios because being in the home rental business is not such a good idea right now, maybe it's not a good idea to get in at the top of the market. Maybe it's not a good idea to be buying an investment property right now. And then you see banks, right? Banks are stockpiling cash and getting ready for waves of defaults like we talked about a few days ago. What is that? That's another warning sign that they know something that we don't, or most people don't, right? If you watch this channel, you definitely know what's going on. And what's going on is things are not going well, guys. And the banks, these big institutional investors, everybody's preparing for bad times ahead. That's literally what they're doing. Stockpiling cash and selling off properties is preparing for things to get worse. So if I were you, I would be doing the same thing. That's at least what I'm doing. You know, I'm not making any big moves or purchases or investments right now. I'm just saving and waiting, because I think that's going to be the best strategy right now in terms of having more opportunity down the line when everything completely blows up. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.